Welcome to Legacy Cast, your source for hearing from top influencers, industry experts, and successful business owners who are telling their unique story about life, values, goals, business strategies, and the various causes they are so passionate about. Future generations will come to be impacted by what is happening today, whether positive or negative, and our mission is to focus on what is going to affect change for the better. Hosted each weekday by James Snow, a former U.S. Army combat medic, now founder and principal advisor of James Advisors Group, a full-service financial planning firm in North Texas. This is Legacy Cast. Welcome to the program today. This is Legacy Cast and your host, James Snow. Welcome you to the program, and where we talk about what people are doing in their world to be able to create a legacy and make sure that the things that are important to them are going to be able to last for multiple generations. I have with me today Malachias Gaskin, and he's an Army veteran and also an author, and he's with us to talk about some alternative techniques as far as what he's doing in his world. So I'd like to welcome Malachias to the program. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
So as far as your book, if we can go ahead and just jump in and kind of, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was actually, the funny thing was I was originally a high school dropout. I joined the military with a GED. And towards the end of my career, when I was getting med boarded, a buddy of mine who ended up becoming my publisher, looked at me and said, "Hey man, you should just really write a book about all the different things that you're doing for PTSD for yourself." I was kind of like, "What, man? No one wants to read that. I'm not some, SF Ranger, general, full bird colonel, sergeant major, and I'm just a sergeant. I have a GED. No one's going to care." And he kind of pushed and was like, "No, you need to write it, man. You just really do." And so I created an outline, which was based on all the different stuff that I was doing. And those outline became chapter titles. And A Warrior's Garden kind of came into fruition of where I wrote down and just documented my journey about what I was doing for myself. And it's kind of morphed into just this bigger, amazing, big ball of amazingness, but it's really about how, for me, I have three pillars that I use. It kind of, I liken it to a triangle or a pyramid, where my three corners are, the top is my faith, and gardening and music. And I've taken it to a point where you have to be able to interlock the three together. So I have to be able to use them all at the same time, as well as individually.
Okay. That sounds very interesting. And where did this come from?
So growing up, I was a landscaper. My dad had a lawn company from the time I was 10 years old till I was 30. And I worked for him just growing, shrubs and grass and trees and all that, and maintaining them. And I was at my a therapy appointment, and my therapist was, I looked at her and I said, "Hey, I said, I come in here every week. I pour my heart out. I tell you things that I'm not comfortable talking to my wife about." And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I was like, "You never say anything. All you do is type. See you next week." I'm like, "I don't know what to do. Like, help me." And she looked me straight in the face and said, "I don't know. Get a dog, start a garden." And so I went home and told my wife, my therapist said, "Get a dog." And my wife was like, "No, you're not getting a dog." I'm like, "Dang it." So I looked at her and she's like, "Well, what else did she say?" She said, "Start a garden." And we had just prior to this, we had kind of transitioned into, we started eating a little healthier. We were going more towards organic and non-GMO based produce and meats. And
Right.
things like that. And she was like, "All right, let's go." And I was like, "What do you mean, let's go?" She's like, "Let's get in the van. Come on, let's go." And so we went to Lowe's that night, and I bought wood, dirt, seed. And at 8:00 at night, we're in the backyard. She's got two flashlights, holding them up in the air, like just in the middle of the night, and I'm building a 4 foot by 4 foot raised bed garden, living on post at Fort Stewart. 3 weeks later, I had three 4 foot by 4 foot beds. And the great thing about being in South Georgia is you can pretty much grow year round depending on what you're growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I mean, I grew wheat. I grew a 4 foot by 4 foot box of wheat just to see if I could do it. I grew a box of sweet potatoes. I grew multiple different types of squashes and okra. I learned how to how to crossbreed or cross pollinate manually, and create my own strain of okra. We grew like 25 different types of peppers. I ended up with like five 5-gallon buckets of tomato plants, and then 2 25-gallon buckets of potatoes. It just grew and grew and got bigger and bigger. And just kind of so what I ended up doing was I took and during this time I went from just growing things to, I started reading my Bible more, getting more in depth with my own personal journey, with my faith journey. And I was already a musician, so I got even more deep into writing lyrics about the things that I had gone through and writing about my experiences in Iraq. I wrote a couple of songs with a buddy that I was stationed with at Fort Stewart named Josh Hudson. In fact, he's getting ready to deploy again. But it just snowballed into this. I just kept trying new stuff and doing new things and finding out what was working, and things that didn't help I got rid of, and things that did help I kept on to. And I just went from there.
Well, excellent. Yeah, it sounds like a very interesting journey that you went through to get to that point.
Yeah, I did. So I did 2 combat tours to Iraq. The first one was I had deployed as a medic, but my prior MOS having been infantry. The chain of command while I was deployed looked at me and said, "Hey, we understand you used to be in the infantry." And I was like, "Yes, sir." They looked at me and said, "Well, you're a squad leader." And I'm like, "No, I'm here as a medic. I'm here to, I'm a combat asset, not a combat multiplier." And they had already approved all of this through my chain of command, and we're like, it's already done. You're going to do it. So I did both jobs. The first deployment, I was an infantryman carrying an medic bag, kicking indoors, doing that job, cataloging villages and all that. Ended up spending the last 4 months in theater as a NCOIC of a level 2 trauma hospital. And when I came home, it was about a month after I got home that my PTSD first started to surface. And it just, the nightmares and the anxiety and the depression and the anger and all of that. And I just didn't settle for it. I didn't want that to be the way it was just going to be, And so I realized I needed to make a change. And so I started going to therapy. And the first thing that the therapist want to do right off the bat is like, "Oh, here's Seroquel, here's Celexa. Just start taking these." And it's like, well, what does that do? How does that help? And then I deployed again as a vocalist for an Army band the second time. And so I got to see how the other part of the Army lives, the non-combat side, where we actually got to go. I mean, I think I had 1 magazine of ammo the whole deployment the second time. And the first time I carried 14 magazines that I would expel on a weekly basis. And so, so I ended up, I came home from the second deployment, and then the Army decided they were going to med board me due to the PTSD and the TBI and the arthritis, bursitis, tendonitis, all the itises, hearing loss, all of it. And so, and that's when I just, right before the med board started is when I started writing the book.
So when you're thinking about legacy, kind of sort of a high level view, what's the first thing that pops in your mind when you think of that?
My veteran community and my children. Are they set up in a way where I left a good enough roadmap or a strong enough roadmap that they're able to excel, either doing the same thing I'm doing or motivated enough to do their own, find their own path. My dad, my family has served in the military every generation since the Revolutionary War. My dad was dishonorably discharged for being an alcoholic on duty on a regular basis. And I wanted to make sure that didn't happen to me, and I served for 17 years. I told both of my boys, I'm like, "Hey, look, you don't have to serve. Like, you can take a break." Our family has done quite a bit. If you decide not to go in, I'm not going to be mad at you, but find something to do. Because, to me, it's like you have 2 types of people. There are 3 types of people. You have, the people that serve, you have the people that support those that serve, and the people that don't give a crap and don't realize the rights that they have because those people serve. And I told my boys, don't be that third one. Be either serve or support those that do. But legacy wise, like, I look at that and it's just like, am I leaving enough information? Am I leaving it set up enough to where when people look at it, they can follow along and do what I do? Or is it not specific enough that they can't? And so, the last 6 months, I've really sat back and kind of just retooled almost everything.
So do you feel like it's important that everyone actively consider what they're doing to impact their own legacy?
I think it should be there. I don't think it should take up all of our time, but I think that it definitely should be at the top, like in the top three of the things that you think about on a regular basis. Because if you're looking at what you're doing to impact your legacy, you're going to be looking at, is it done for the right reasons? Number one, are you doing it in the right ways? And are you doing it in a way that's going to improve the lives of those around you and those that follow along? Because if you do all of that, because look, we can't take anything with us. So really the mark in life is what have we left behind? And it's got to be more than just material possessions. It's got to be mentalities. It's got to be like your mindset. It's got to be the honor and the integrity that you live your life with. Are you passing that down to the next generation, to the people following along with you?
Right. So how do your views on legacy affect your plans as far as business? Business.
So legacy gives me the opportunity to do a lot of backwards planning and look at what's my end goal and my end statement, and then look back at, like, how does this affect, again, those people that are watching, and how does it affect my family in the long run? So I mean, I spend a lot of time focused on, does this increase my brand? Does this increase what I'm doing? Because my brand and what I'm doing is what's creating the legacy that I'm hoping to leave. And so if I'm not doing that in a positive way, well, then I need to take a step back, look at what I'm doing wrong, and make adjustments off of that.
Sure. So from kind of taking a CEO entrepreneur standpoint, are there maybe a couple things, 2 or 3 things that keep you up at night still with that whole process?
Finding a strong and positive way to market without breaking the bank financially on that, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on marketing. I'm a big fan of positive referral and word of mouth marketing. Yeah. I think those are your strongest styles. Like if you have enough people talking about the positive things that you're doing and talking about the way that you've impacted their life, you're going to do more with that than you would with $100,000 budget. And so that finding a way to do that in a way that's cost effective and beneficial. And then I think that the biggest thing is, am I creating a reputation, now that will facilitate the legacy being left? Sure. And it's, I think about that regularly. It doesn't keep me up, but it makes me think a lot, and it occupies a lot of my time.
So do you believe it's important that people create things such as business plans and financial plans for both family and business?
I'll be honest, I've never done a business plan for any business I've ever owned or ever ran. I know in my head what I'm doing. It's really hard for me to put that part on paper in a structured way that makes sense to the banks, I guess. But I think that anybody who's not doing at least a financial plan, like, you're wrong. You need to have a financial plan in place, set up to where what's your primary goal financially, what's your secondary and your tertiary goal financially. You know what I mean? Like, are you putting the money in the places where it needs to be, and are you spending on the things that are going to benefit you? Because if you're wasting money on just stupid stuff, which, hey, look, we're going to, and sometimes you just need to, but is it in an abundance? And so, yeah, I think financially, if you don't have a solid financial plan, you're not going to be able to leave a legacy, because you're just going to continue to spin your wheels.
So what do you think is probably the most common reason that entrepreneurs are failing in their business or giving up that you've noticed?
I think a lot of times, that from what I've seen, is they just expect, everybody has a great idea, right? And let's be honest, everybody does. We all have great ideas about the things we want to do and why we want to do it. The amount of effort that you're putting into it on a regular basis, and are you just expecting people to jump on board and do it because it's who you are? Like, with my workshops, I push my workshops and I promote my workshops and I talk about my workshops and I try to get them out there in people's minds so they're thinking about it. But if I'm not actively doing it on a regular basis, like if I let other things, and the biggest thing is, especially as an entrepreneur, 8 to 5 doesn't exist anymore. You own that business, you're working at 24 hours a day. You can set personal time and family time, but you own that business. It's your job to make it grow. The business is one of your children now. It's part of your family. And you have to make sure that you're giving it that kind of effort. I know that I faltered for a while personally, where I was considering my book and all of my stuff like my side hustle. You know what I mean? I didn't make it my primary. And so I wasn't giving it the same effort that